This short film will be used to explore rave culture, the effect upon the decade during its heyday and what it has become today. But first, what is rave culture and how can it be defined? In the Continuum Encyclopedia of Popular Music of the World, Media, Industry and Society, a rave has been defined as a large, illicit, all-night party or event, often held in a warehouse or open field, with dancing to loud, fast electronic music. Additionally, it states that a rave is primarily a weekend event, allowing participants to be whatever they choose during the week and the raver on the weekends. But where did raves come from? In the early 1980s America, more notably New York, Chicago and Detroit, a number of DJs have been experimenting with synthesized percussion tracks and high-energy sounds of their own creation, and fusing them with carefully mixed soul and disco hits from the early part of the decade. In particular, at a Chicago club called The Warehouse, a three-level dance club in which the regulars of this club loved this new sound, and thus the term house music was born. It was not long before these DJs were in studios producing house music from scratch. Others started to follow, and racks in the uptown record stores of Chicago became packed with new titles from new artists with new sounds. Chicago then had not realised the potential of its new music until Farley Jackmaster Funk released Love Can't Turn Around, and he became an overnight sensation in the UK. In September 1986, it reached number 10 in the national charts, but it did not stop here. New British bands then seized the opportunity to copy this sound and created a commercial equivalent which took the UK charts by storm. This was the beginning of many subgenres of music which also became very influential upon rave culture, such as acid house, old school jungle, techno, electronica and many more. All very fast-paced electronic dance genres of music which would become the soundtrack to many free parties and raves during this decade. During the 1980s, free parties became a direct result of this musical revolution, in which many people would gather in either large rural areas or empty warehouses in places such as London and Manchester, but then soon sprung up all over the UK, to dance this music and usually take part in transgressive and recreational drug use, which became largely associated with this subculture. For ravers, their drug choice would usually be MDMA or ecstasy, and sometimes hallucinogens such as LSD, shrooms and 2CB, to name a few. Drugs which induce feelings of euphoria which would be enhanced by the accompanying music and light shows at these events. As well as rave culture being a rejection of the mainstream masculine club culture that focused heavily on alcohol consumption, it also had come to be seen as a response to austerity and rejection of the current government and society at the time. Rave culture emerged during a time of mass political and social change, during Thatcher's reign, a time of social unrest, public protesting and rioting such as the miners' strike. The rise of acid house coincided with the opening of a new wave of clubs across the UK and beginnings of the warehouse and open air raves, situated against a backdrop of high Thatcherism, which included heightened deindustrialisation and the growth of high finance capitalism. In 1987, after defeating the trade unions during the miners' strike of 1985, during Thatcher's third electoral victory and a period considered to be the high point of Thatcherism, she unleashed a wave of privatisation and deindustrialisation across the country. Many heavy industries in the north of England, as well as Scotland and Wales, collapsed, and where jobs were available to replace the traditional heavy industries, they were usually unskilled, low-paid and short-term, which consequently led to mass unemployment. Additionally, this was also a troubling time due to cuts to public spending and the reduction of the welfare state. Meanwhile, in the southeast of England, especially in London, the economy boomed, fueled by the deregulation of the finance industry in 1986, which led to a north-south divide within the UK. Heavy industry, especially around the east end of London and the docks, also dried up, and the inner city began its path towards gentrification. Since the mid-1980s, London became too expensive for many workers, and those who benefited from the boom in the finance industry moved in their place. Furthermore, with the decline of heavy industry in the north, factories and fields, once the sites of booming industrial sector, were transformed from empty spaces into potential venues for clubs and raves. In the northern acid house scene, it was not just basic transgressive hedonism taking place, but a chance to escape from a dreary post-industrial world that had been delivered by nearly a decade of Thatcherism. Not sites of resistance to Thatcherism, but a withdrawal from engagement with it. Ravers had no interest in taking part in this society. However, due to the criminal nature behind some of the aspects of rave culture, i.e. the drug culture attached to this subculture, and trespassing, which regularly took place upon privately owned land in order for free parties to be held. Ravers soon became the focus of the media and a conservative government who considered them all to be deviant. In the 1990s, ravers had become constructed as folk devils, which resulted in moral panics and outrage from the public and major media outlets. Folk devils and moral panics are terms coined by the sociologist Cohen in his study upon mods and rockers. Folk devils can be defined as a person or thing held to be a bad influence on society, and moral panics can be seen to be an instance of public anxiety or alarm in response to a problem regarded as threatening the moral standards of society. However, Cohen found these were often sensationalized problems fueled by exaggerated media reporting. Leah Sarah Betts is notable for the extensive media coverage and moral panic that followed her death 15 days after her 18th birthday. Leah took an ecstasy tablet and then drank approximately 7 litres of water within 90 minutes. Leah later collapsed into a coma and died shortly after. The press reported that her death was an example of the dangers of illegal drugs in general, and MDMA in particular, and it was suggested that the pill she had taken was from a contaminated batch. The media had also focused on the supposed fact that it was the first time she had taken the drug. It was later found, though much less publicised, that she had taken the drug at least 3 times previously. Not long afterward, a major poster campaign used a photograph of her with the caption, "Sorted, just 1 ecstasy tablet took Leah Betts." A following inquest determined that her death was actually not directly due to MDMA, but rather the result of the large quantity of water she had consumed, and yet the campaign made no mention of the crucial role water intoxication played in her death. Alternative rock band Chumbawamba responded with their own anti-poster, reading, "Distorted, you were just as likely to die from eating a bay leaf as from an ecstasy tablet." Leah Betts' death is a perfect example of the type of media coverage that followed rave culture at the time. In 1994, under John Major's Conservative government, the police were granted extra powers, often rather militant and extreme riot tactics, to crack down on raves, eventually leading to the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994, which put an end to the groups of people wanting to listen to repetitive beats without a license. This act so clearly aimed itself at rave culture, as it depicted specifically that large-scale outdoor parties where repetitive electronic music is played was to be outlawed. It would seem that this was the death of rave subculture, however this may not be the case. Today rave culture has been moved into the mainstream club culture with large clubs advertising nights as raves. Much of this particular club culture still maintains many characteristics of the original rave culture that was born in the 1980s, but of course with a few changes. For instance, Manchester Warehouse Project, Fabric, an infamous club in London, and more locally, Motion and Lakota, clubs in which are at the heart of Bristol's nightlife scene, often still hold raves, although with more rigid regulated stances on drug use. However, crime is inevitable, and in this case, rave is inevitable. Durkheim, a functionalist, said that crime is inevitable in society. This is because not everyone will buy into the collective sentiments of society and will deviate from these norms and beliefs. Durkheim said a certain amount of crime and deviance is normal and an integral part of all healthy societies. This is because it acts as a safety valve, providing a relatively harmless way for someone to express their discontent. This could possibly be used to argue that the transgressive aspects of rave culture, such as drug use, will somehow always be clung to as a way for youth to escape from the society that has disappointed them. Take it away, John Sim.
Come on! The weekend has landed. All that exists now is clubs, drugs, pubs and parties. I've got 48 hours off from the world, man. I'm gonna blow steam out of my head like a screaming kettle. I'm gonna talk cod shit to strangers all night. I'm gonna lose the plot on the dance floor. The free radicals inside me are freaking, man. Tonight I'm Jip Travolta. I'm Peter Popper. I'm going to Never Neverland with my chosen family, man. We're gonna get more spaced out than Neil Armstrong ever did. Anything could happen tonight, you know? This could be the best night of my life. I've got 73 quid in my back burner. I'm gonna wax the lot, man. The Milky Bars are on me! Yeah! Calling all the crusaders of the dance floor in green light mode. Disco queens, club casualties. Come on, let's join forces. Let's hoof it down!